To celebrate 50 years of Saturday Night Live, I have a Canadian who was a big part of the launch and success of this series, and it's not Lorne Michaels. Meet her next on Brio TV, the podcast. Hi, everybody. Bill Brio here. Welcome to a special podcast presentation from both Brio TV and Late Nighter. Speaking of which, can you believe it has been nearly 50 years since Chevy Chase first shouted, "Live from New York, it's Saturday night"? NBC and Global will air that very first October 11, 1975 episode on Saturday, February the 15th at 11:30 p.m. The next day, Sunday the 16th, NBC and Global will air the 3-hour-long Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary special. It will feature many of the not ready for primetime players, hosts, and musical acts showcased over the years. Immediately prior to that, NBC will air a 1-hour live red carpet show that same Sunday night. Now, my guest will be one of the SNL originals who will be walking that red carpet. Although when I spoke with her last week, she still didn't have a dress picked out yet. She was truly there at the beginning, though, even years before the beginning, and helped define the comic sensibility of the series as one of the original writers. I'm talking, of course, about Rosie Shuster, somebody I've never interviewed before and who I'm so happy to have spoken with now. First of all, she's the daughter of Canadian comedy legend Frank Shuster, one half of the famous team Wayne and Shuster, who we saw so many times on the Ed Sullivan Show and in Canada on decades of specials. She grew up in Toronto, and one of her friends at school was her future husband, Lorne Michaels. Now, he would come over and hang around the Shuster house where he peppered Frank with questions and soaked up every nugget of showbiz wisdom he could get. Now, while their on-again, off-again marriage was pretty much in name only by the time SNL went on the air, their partnership was at the root of Saturday Night Live's success. Shuster's contributions as a writer were key, and together with fellow writers Ann Beats and Jim Downey, she was responsible for many of the sketches made famous by the original cast. The Killer Bees, much of what Gilda Radner's Rosanna said at Weekend Update, the Todd and Lisa sketches with Radner and Bill Murray, and much, much more. But never mind, as Emily Latella, another character Shuster wrote for Radner, would say. Let's hear it from the two-time Emmy winner herself. Here she is, Rosie Shuster. Well, listen, thank you so much. I'm really delighted to talk to you. It's been you're really someone I've wanted to talk to for a long time. So,
okay.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Where are you in Toronto?
No, I'm north of Toronto, about an hour. I live in Orangeville. It's west north of Toronto, but I grew up in Etobicoke.
Okay.
So I was in the West End.
Sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely. And I worked at TV Guide Canada for years, years ago. And that's where I first met your dad. They were doing a sod turning for the CBC Broadcast Center in the late 80s. And I was there, and Johnny Wayne and your dad, Frank.
Sod turning.
Yeah, they hadn't even built the building yet. It was sort of, they were going to finally build a broadcast center. And I just remember Johnny Wayne saying to me, now they build it, he was, he was after they worked in 30 different buildings all over the city.
Right.
So it was pretty cool. But I talked to your dad out later when they did Wayne and Shuster in black and white and different things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that was quite a thrill because I was a big fan growing up. Yeah.
How long have you been doing? This is intermittently a TV show and a podcast?
It's always a podcast, audio. Been doing it for 5 years, and but I've written about TV for 40 for the Canadian Press and the Toronto Star and different things. So, but I love. Yeah, this is better. There's no spelling, and it's great to get to talk to folks like you. So it's fun.
Great.
Well, first of all, did you pick a dress yet for the 50th? That's the big question.
No, I'm just entirely baffled, and I melted Richard's credit card because I just have debit cards because somebody once said, "Oh, you'll never get debt if you just use debit cards." So I use debit cards. And you can't, there's a lot of things I've got a baby starter credit card because I haven't had credit cards for so long. I don't have credit. So anyway.
Well, good luck. When is
I have to prove myself with, my $500 limit,
That's funny. When is the big event?
There are two events, February 14th and February 16th. I do not have a dress to answer your question definitively. No, I have many. I mean, people are sending me all these pictures, but they're nothing if you don't try them on, because a black shroud could be it. And some of these things that look slinky and foxy don't, they're not right. They're just so back. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Well, best of luck.
I'll be relieved when I get that. And there's two outfits because there's also going to be a music night.
Wow.
Where I have,
That's fantastic. What an exciting time. Is it staggering to you does it seem possible that this is 50 years ago?
No, time and age and that, it's just always, it's surreal to me. It's like, okay, I see how you calculated that, but it's just right. I can't fault your math, but okay, apparently it's true. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, I'm going to ask some questions. We're going to go pretty much chronological, but I'll try not to jump around.
Okay, well, yeah, I don't know what I know a few things about, I worked on some Hart and Lorne's, not on others, if you're going chronologically, but go ahead. You ask the questions.
Well, let's talk about that. The Hart and Lorne Terrific Hour, 1970, 71. I've seen episodes. I even remember watching a few. The guy, when I was, 1970, I was 12, 13 years old. So I saw, to me, the guy, Hart as the beaver was the guy that jumped out. Did you write for the beaver? Did you do some of the dialogue for those sketches?
I think Hart and Lorne did all their own, two-man stand-up kind of stuff. I don't think anybody wrote for the beaver but Hart and Lorne.
Yeah.
But I did write for the Hart and Lorne. I did some stuff for Hart and Lorne show. My brother and I actually did something called the Karma Game on, I think it was the Hart and Lorne. Yeah, the Terrific Hour.
Yeah. It strikes me as so far ahead of its time. I saw an episode with James Taylor, and my God, technically even the lighting and the sound, everything was crisp and fantastic. And the other shows on would have been like Don Messer's Jubilee and
right. Well, my dad was mentoring Lorne a lot, and Lorne had done Laugh-In, and though he hadn't been on set, which drove him crazy with that. But then what did he do? He hadn't done Lily Tomlin yet. But he'd also, but Laugh-In was a big show. And he discovered he was more interested in producing than any other aspect of things. And my father was, mentoring him constantly. So it wasn't the humor they absorbed from Wayne and Shuster, but how to shoot comedy and, just different, how to handle the brass, as they used to call them, the suits, and how, just techniques and tactics and so I think Lorne came in expecting more than most people asked for, and I think, he was able to get it because he was, Yeah.
So. And you write, I reread Tom Shale's book, Live from New York, a collection of interviews with you and many others who were writers and actors and players. And you've got the very first quote in the book, which is that, Lorne Michaels arrived in my life before puberty.
That is absolutely correct, sir.
Yeah, it's not even a joke, is it? You really did. Yeah.
No, that is not a bada bing, bada boom. That was sadly true. Yeah.
Well,
I was waiting for Godot for a while there, but
that had to wait. But it sounds like that Lorne had to, that he was so keen to learn from your dad, and just, but he was also struck with you at a very early age,
right.
and that. It seems like such a sweet story that the sort of learning this craft at the kitchen table at your house, which was, I think you're also quoted saying that Saturday Night Live was so much a part of something that grew from my home, right?
I totally think the roots and the first seeds of what would become SNL grew from my home. And what, people don't talk about is Lorne was also observing my dad on Ed Sullivan show.
Right.
And I haven't even talked about my theory yet, but I'll tell you because it's been on my mind.
Well, let's hear it. Thank you.
Well, Ed Sullivan, he was kind of stiff and awkward, and everybody did impressions of him, which they would also do with Lorne, which was kind of eerie. And he saw, Ed Sullivan brought you the Beatles. He brought Elvis before anybody saw him. He, so it was kind of, appointment TV. People wanted to, could tap into what was new in the zeitgeist. And I think that really left a strong impression on Lorne, who was, very sponge-like in those days in terms of absorbing, all kinds of different input. I do think that, that even though there was comedy, there was variety, there were, elephants and jugglers, but, it was how to tap into the zeitgeist to see what was, what was new. And I think that had an effect on what SNL became too.
Well, when you look at the very first episodes of Saturday Night Live, you didn't have plate spinners, but you had the Muppets, you had films by Albert Brooks. There does seem to be more variety and less comedy on those first 3 or 4 episodes, right?
Absolutely. Well, while you're still trying to so-called find the show, it takes a while, to see what works. Yeah, I mean, and what works live is very different than what you can get your hands on and edit, because you can save a lot of things in editing and you don't get that luxury. Right. What you do get is you don't have to do a pilot and the suits can't give you notes, which was a big perk.
Well, the other interesting parallel is that Wade and Shuster were live on Ed Sullivan, weren't they? It wasn't edited.
It was a live show. It was live from New York on the weekend.
Yeah.
Comedy variety,
Like you mentioned that, Lorne learned more about the suits and how to produce, but was there some...
and how to shoot comedy, A lot of people didn't know to stay on the reaction shot, but my dad was such a fan of Jack Benny that he really learned that the bigger laugh sometimes was just on the reaction shot. How to frame comedy. So that was the kind of stuff I think that Lorne really absorbed that made him look not like, he just rolled off the turnip truck or whatever the Toronto version of that is.
The maple
transistor
syrup
truck. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's fascinating in a way, your dad and Wade and Shuster, I've seen some of the films they did about, the Marx Brothers and I think Jack Benny and things. And so they were
there was a series they did called An Affectionate Look. Yeah.
I collect 16 millimeter films and have some friends who do, and they have prints of some of those. But they were also, as much as they were, they paid homage to the masters of the craft. They were 2 guys from the University of Toronto too. They were and so you had this hybrid coming at you guys that was some of the old and some of the new, right?
Right.
That had to have been an advantage trying to reinvent, because that seemed to be the goal of Saturday Night Live, is to just blow up television and start again.
Well, the thing that always occurs to me about it is music reflected the culture in the 60s and 70s, because there was the British invasion, there was Bob Dylan, emerged. There was, there were a lot of people that were reflected what was happening with youth, as and movies took a little longer, but there was Easy Rider and a bunch of different movies started to reflect, The Graduate and lots of stuff started to reflect what was happening in the culture. Television was like so square. It was such a hip thing to say you didn't own a TV. It was just Perry Como and Andy, whatever his name. There were crooners in in alpaca cardigans. It was not what was happening in our world, know. So it was really, there was a void, there was a vacuum.
Yeah, in reading that book on Saturday Night Live, there was a lot of notes from NBC brass. They were panicked that the host of the show, the very first week, George Carlin, would only appear in a T-shirt. That seemed to be their big concern, right? That he
well, because there was just this idea that people you're going into people's living rooms. You have to be, you have to be very well groomed and respectfully dressed, and that was crazy. I mean, that was how they felt, though. There was this very staid, squared, straight kind of idea of what it should be. And so the show wanted to shake all that up and, have a mirror of what was actually going on. Yeah. Which, there was a lot of sex, drugs, rock and roll happening that was never reflected on TV. It was in music and it was in movies. Yeah.
And then later it was on the 17th floor of Rockefeller Plaza.
Yes, it rolled up into there. That is true.
It's amazing. Don't go away. We'll be right back with Rosie Shuster. Well, February is here, and it's packed with a mountain of new entertainment on Paramount+. Don't miss the new series Watson, starring Morris Chestnut. This is a modern spin on the Sherlock Holmes tale, with Chestnut as Dr. Watson, back treating rare disorders 6 months after the death of his friend and partner, Sherlock Holmes. For reality buffs, there is a 5th season of The Challenge All-Stars featuring 26 cast members from shows like The Real World, Big Brother, Survivor, and others, and they're all competing for a grand prize. Come Valentine's Day, catch the 2nd season premiere of NCIS Sydney, as well as the new reality series The Wranglers, set at Montana's Circle Bar Dude Ranch. Look for the new all-Canadian feature, Aberdeen, about an indomitable middle-aged Indigenous climate change refugee forced from her home due to flooding. Finally, don't miss the 2nd season of Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone origin story, 1923, starring both Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. This month, you'll find No Yellowstone Unturned on Paramount+. Hey, have you been watching the new season of When Calls the Heart on Super Channel? The Shot in BC series is back on Heart and Home with more stories set in the 1920s about family, community, and romance. Look for a special guest, Melissa Gilbert from Little House on the Prairie, way back then, as Georgie McGill, who shares a surprising past with one key resident of Hope Valley. Thursdays on Super Channel Fuse, look for more new episodes of Fake. Magazine writer Bertie Bell meets Joe Bird on a dating app and thinks she's found her perfect match, but is her boyfriend all he's cracked up to be? Over on Super Channel Quest, check out Secrets in the Ice, which is not about the Toronto Maple Leafs never winning another Stanley Cup, but examines history once frozen in time. That's all this month, plus tons of movies and more on Super Channel, available via most cable providers across the country, as well as streaming live and on demand with Amazon Prime Video channels, Apple TV Plus, and Fubo. And we're back with Rosie Shuster. Well, did you know Howard Shore as a youngster as well? Did he grew up in the same? Yeah,
of course. In 100 ways, because he went to West Prep, the same school that I went to and Lorne had gone to, and he went to Camp New Moon and Camp Timberlane where we did shows, and so we were at school. We were, and then he lived in the building that Lorne and I first lived in when we got married with his wife, and we were, so
amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
And in reading a bit, they did this show at the camps, the Fast Show. It's incredible to me. The roots of Saturday Night Live almost go back there as well, right?
Well, that was another place to, get your chops together and see, and try stuff. Yeah.
There was now here's a couple of shows I don't think you were associated with, but I'm going to ask. Coming Up, Rosie was a Canadian comedy.
That was Danny Aykroyd was in that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
Rosemary Radcliffe, I guess, was Rosie.
That's right. Yeah. And I think John Candy did an episode or two, and then they did the Steinberg show.
I don't know if I ever even saw that. Are you there?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Rosie. I accidentally unplugged my earphones for a second there. Sorry about that.
I said nothing of any interest.
I doubt it. So when did you and Lorne come together to America? Did Lorne go down first? What was the sequence there?
Well, there were probably 30 or 40 trips back and forth to Toronto and LA. And some of the, originally I did go with him. And then I stayed in Toronto sometimes and he worked. We were also going through our own internal, weird process as I'd been with him since, I was a child. So I never, and he had a lot of opinions about how I should be. So I was just trying to get a little, freedom, I think. So I didn't always follow him down.
Right.
So, yeah, sometimes I was there a lot and I wasn't there a lot. So it was a mix.
Did you work on the Phyllis Diller show or Laugh-In or any?
He would call me and tell me about the Phyllis Diller show. There were not very many episodes, praise the Lord. It was a big stink-do. And I was in the weird position of having to break it to him because, you sort of fall in love with the other. He was with all these other pro comedy writers and they would go to lunches and laugh. And, so you get an unreal sense of the product. So I think he had fun, but I think, it was not a wonderful show.
But later on, Lily Tomlin, you wrote
Yes,
for
I
her.
did work. Yeah. I did work on Lily Tomlin. I actually, when I was, I actually got a monologue on Laugh-In.
Oh,
because
really?
He and Hart needed a quota of monologues for Rowan and Martin. So I tried my hand at it and they picked mine. I didn't sign it. I didn't get credit, but I thought I was getting away with something when it went on TV. I had very pathetic expectations for myself at that point.
Did you get paid?
No,
What?
Nothing, nada, nothing. And nobody said, hey, no, but I was insane, but I was like, thrilled it went on television.
You should have got at least a Fickled Finger of Fate award or something.
Something, yeah.
Well, it worked out. After that, and it just listen to all these names like George Schlatter, Lily Tomlin. You're just right there at the epic center of it all, bringing it with you. So then there's the ramp up to Saturday Night Live, and I assume you've seen the movie Saturday Night that's come out recently. Right. Yeah.
Sure.
What was that? That depicts the hours leading up to the very first.
Well, it's kind of hyper, Jason called it hyper realism. And he talked to whoever was left on the green side of the grass, who was there on October 11th, 1975.
Yeah.
And there were fewer of us left, but so based on all the input he got and whatever he read and all the stuff that's been written and the 2 books, and there are more than 2 books now, they squeezed it together. What actually happens between dress rehearsal and air is the show's always long. You have to cut some pieces. The pieces that go, you get notes from Lorne, who will, sometimes there need to be internal cuts. So the writers have 5 minutes to write, to do rewrites and to get to cue cards and get to the actors. And if necessary, get to costumes or props or the scenery to just say what the changes are. So what Jason did was take a lot of liberties and a lot of stories and squish them in, to a kind of hyper real. So he was trying to be true to the spirit of that, what that was like. But, it's all business between dress and air. It's a very adrenal window.
Yeah, I bet.
It's like the cortisol is high and there's, you're just trying to get it all done before, because the camera, they don't care. 11:30 is 11:30. They don't care if you,
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So it's,
well,
go ahead.
Well, what Jason Reitman was doing, really, it's like what Aaron Sorkin has done with the Lucy, I Love Lucy, or others. Mm-hmm. You have to compress to make a movie. Mm-hmm. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
It becomes its own thing. Yeah.
But you were right there. There wasn't a lot of sketch comedy in that first episode, but there were the Killer Bees, and I understand that was yours, right?
Well, I was really, I got New Dad, which was commercial parody in that first show, but I was kind of horrified, Richard. I mean, that Lorne had wanted to put the bees in the first show because it was kind of a conceptual thing, and I didn't think it was going to work in that context, and especially not live. I was still thinking of it in a more surreal way, so I wasn't happy that was in. I thought it was, but he saw the potential for a running something that pulled the cast together, and so it found its way. But it started a big animosity between Belushi and me.
Wow. You don't want it.
I could have skipped that.
You don't want to pick that fight, I guess.
And he had a pre-existing animosity against Dan Beats because of stuff with his, titters and his wife. So, yeah, that was not a fabulous start. There were.
I should ask you to explain that, but maybe not.
No. I don't. Some of it's not my story to tell, really.
All right. Well, let's stick with yours. There's plenty. Because the notion that seems out there is that Belushi really did not have a lot of confidence in females who wrote on the show. Was that actually true?
Well, I think it was different with the cast members than it was with the writers. He did one piece with Marilyn that that was a dramatic scene with Sissy Spacek, and he liked that one because he got to show his drama chops. But the truth is, I wrote things with Jim Downey and I left my initials off, and then Belushi would go to Jim and say, "Do another one of those." It's like he didn't know I had written it. And then in the book on John Belushi, the only piece that is printed in it is the thing that I wrote with my brother, which was Adopt Belushi for Christmas.
That's funny.
Because I think Judy was fed up with his coke habit and blah, blah, blah. So she kind of locked him out. So I wrote a piece and my brother helped me. I remember we were on an airplane for some reason and we wrote it during the flight. And it's the one thing that in the Belushi book that's there. So it's by me. So,
that's great.
Booga booga.
You showed him. That's
really.
Right out of A Night at the Opera. Booga booga. There's so many of those great sketches, but it was still pretty unique to be a woman writing comedy in television, wasn't it? At this point,
well, there weren't a lot. It's like there had been a Lucille Cowan Cowan had been on I Love Lucy, and there had been a Madeline somebody. There were very few. Madeline Pugh, you're exactly right. Mm-hmm. And very, very few. And what was difficult was there are some female-oriented experiences that are not relatable to men. They're less relatable to men. And when you the women are laughing or rolling their eyes or whatever, but the guys are, like, I don't get it. That happened with the hard hats, which I had done, the idea to, and it was just a simple switch. It wasn't some brilliant premise, but it was just kind of really making a point to have men be the target of just being objectified, and nobody wanted to play it. And finally, I think Lorne twisted Danny's arm, and he was a good sport, and he did it. But
I've read that Belushi in particular refused to do it. And then Ackles.
Yeah, well, he was self-conscious about his body, and he didn't want to be wearing just a little pair of short shorts. So I think right there it was, big problemo. And yeah, it just, he wanted to, his macho bona fides or bona fides, as people say. Yeah.
Was it more fun writing for the female members? Like you did a lot, Rosanna Dana and Emily Latella and everything. Yeah, I mean Barbara Wawa.
Yep. It was a lot of fun writing with Gilda because she would participate and she would do pieces of character for you, and that just, you saw where the potential was. And it just, sometimes, I can't say they wrote themselves, but you had such a head start when you see what the potential of the character is. Gilda had a voice kind of for Roseanne, and I kind of went off into the disgustingness of what she was obsessed with. It was in a sketch called Hire the Incompetent. She didn't have her name yet. Yeah. And I did the first Emily Latella as well, and then somehow Zweibel consumed.
Well,
I was like taking candy from a baby. I wasn't, it was not very good. I wasn't fierce as I would learn to be, that I needed to be.
Well, pretty hard jungle, but good for you. You must have been fierce on some levels.
I was. Yeah, you were. You just had to put yourself out there, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But
you would already have known Gilda from Toronto?
I did know Gilda from Toronto. Yeah. I saw her in Godspell. I just saw this massive hair and this little face, and she just lit up the stage. She was just such an obvious, she just had that quality, that thing that everybody wants to have. And all the eyes went to her. She just galvanized attention, and she always stayed in touch with the childlike part of her, which was very darling and genuine, not cutesy put on kind of.
Pretty amazing. Well, it's certainly viewers that came through the TV set, didn't it? That quality that she had.
Well, and it was an immediacy, and she was made to do live theater and live television. She needed an audience to feed on. And later it made me sad when she was doing these movies that just didn't get who she was or what could make her shine. So that's my 2 cents worth.
You'd also would have, I guess, seen Catherine O'Hara and Andrea Martin at that time? Or when I was in New York, I don't think they carried it then, but I saw the show as soon as I could. I wasn't in Toronto anymore, so I didn't see what New York didn't carry. But I saw it soon enough, and I was a big fan of, I think Catherine's wonderful talent. Yeah. Back after this short break with Rosie. Time once again to speak with Emily Gagne at Hollywood Suite. Emily, what do you got for us this month?
Well, it's Black History Month, Bill, so we're celebrating Black excellence with some incredible titles from throughout Black cinema history. You know, we've got a ton of Spike Lee stuff, Do the Right Thing, The Inside Man. But we also have some like lesser known titles like The Watermelon Woman, which is a really, really cool movie from the 90s. That's a precursor to like queer Black cinema.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Wow. I have not seen that. And any Canadian titles?
Yes, we have this film Guess Who, which is about the mummering, which is an act in, I guess, Newfoundland, where kind of like trick-or-treating, where you go door to door in costumes. Anyways, it's a horror movie about that. So guess who's coming to dinner, and guess who on Hollywood Suite this month.
Look, there's a good theme. Don't miss it. February on Hollywood Suite. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Bill.
Richard Fader from Fort Lee, New Jersey writes in and says, "Dear Rosanna Dan, I keep reading about King Tut. Who is this Tut? What's so special about this Tut? Did you know that Tut spelled backwards still spells Tut? Do you think the Tut will ever come to my town? Mr. Fader, this king got enough problems being dead. Don't make it worse by making him go to New Jersey."
And we're back. What was your dad's reaction when you started, winning Emmy Awards and all of this incredible fame? He must have been very, very proud of you.
Well, apparently I didn't exactly know that, but he told me a story, and it was not going to make sense because the last line is in Yiddish, and I don't know. Let me see if I could do it justice, but it's the one that comes up for me when I elected my father. He boasted to Danny Kaye when he was, I don't know, he ran into him in New York somewhere, that his daughter and son-in-law had won Emmys. And Danny Kaye had said, "It's a simcha in my tuchus," which means it's a big thrill in my ass.
I was just using that expression the other day. That's so
it's
unique.
A big thrill. It's a big thrill in my ass.
That's
and he was just sort of shut down. But in telling that story, I kind of could deduce he was bragging, which my father almost never did. He was like on the modest side of the scale, that he was, bragging to Danny Kaye, who could give a flying,
That should be the title of your next book, though.
Yes, that'll just alienate everybody, especially now. Yes, stay away. It's just.
It must be. Yeah, it would. If you were working on Saturday Night Live, starting out now, boy, what would you be able to write about? Do you look back and think, well, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. The world's changed.
Well, I think people, I'm not I think the sensitivity sometimes goes way too far. I think there are sensitivities. The culture was desperately in need of a correction. There's no question about it. And it will be again if it's, where it looks like things are going. It kind of looks bleak. But there was. I would have been canceled for 2 different pieces. They're not really in any reruns in that. Yeah.
Wow.
I did a pervy babysitter, Uncle Roy, who that would never fly now. And I get it, but he never harmed the girls. Gilda and Lorraine played the girls, and the girls adored their Uncle Roy. So he was guilty of thought crimes. Yeah. And then there was another thing. Gilda had another character that there was a sensitivity. It seemed like we were making fun of autistic kids, which I swear on.
Right. No.
I would never. I mean, I'm a person with a good amount of compassion. That was not where it was coming from. But the sensitivity, so that stopped being shown. Fine. I don't know. Maybe but. Because to me, comedy is very much about flirting with taboos, and to flirt with taboos, you occasionally, wander over on the wrong side of the equation, and that's how that's not cool. No. But you have to, if you're just always coloring way inside the line, that's some timid, weak stuff you're going to write. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. No, you have to push the envelope. That's comedy. And
that's it.
In any era.
Yeah.
Speaking of flirting, though, I wanted to just run this by you. There's John Landis is quoted in that Shales book, Live from New York. And, he singles you out in one passage here. I guess he was getting a tour of the office. This was around the time of Animal House, and Landis was looking to trying to persuade Lorne to let go of Belushi, I think, or Chevy. And then he says that John was giving me a tour when a very sexy girl walks by. He's talking about you. It's very flattering. It must be warm your heart to read these passages these days. But what he says is that
what if I'm hungry for old compliments? Yeah, I could.
Well,
that's pathetic.
Not pathetic. I'd have a T-shirt made with this on it if it was me. Are you kidding? Come on.
Yeah, that would be compounding it. I'm afraid.
It would be a little disturbing, yeah. But you've got. But he says to John, "Who's that?" Oh my God! And John says, "That's Rosie Shuster. That's Lauren's wife and Danny's girlfriend." That's the funniest. That's amazing. So
yeah, well, we were not really together at the beginning. Lorne asked me to do the show anyway, and we made a deal. He said, that our personal life would not have anything to do with our private life, and he was having a private life too. It was not just, I wasn't scandal as that passage would give you to believe. I wasn't to lead any feminist riots or insurrections. So I took that seriously. There was one time when people were swarming and I just sat it out. I didn't want to be. Because I was probably more political and more punky than Lorne was. He had some of the semblance of hippie culture, but his head was, he also knew the other side of the street very, very well.
I guess. And just some sense of what was it like to suddenly be so famous? Even the writers on the show, I'm sure you were.
Well, we just saw each other mostly. It's like we didn't have a lot of time out, The one thing that struck me about that is you could go to the Korean market on a Sunday night or Monday morning to shop finally, and you'd hear people doing the catchphrases that you wrote, at the Korean market. And that was bizarre. You'd hear people go, never mind, or, later, isn't that special? Or, it's just, that was surreal.
That's amazing.
And I've always had this thing where real life and televised life bleed together. When my dad first got me and my brother a Mustang to share, I remember I went into the car one day and my father's voice came on as soon as I turned the car on, going, "And kids, remember to use your seatbelts."
Right. Good.
It was my dad's voice in the car.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so there was some confusion sometimes between which was which.
I bet. What was the pressure like to crank out sketches, I guess, by late on Tuesday or early Wednesday morning for the...
By read-through. Read-through was the deadline. And read-through, you had to have the PAs had to be able to type it up. And
often you'd be through the night doing this, right?
Absolutely. I never went home on a Tuesday night.
Wow.
We slept there. Yep. That was... Yeah. And Lorne would, have us and do this for the girls, or Gilda, Lorraine is light in the show, write a piece for her, or often for Garrett, we'd get instructions to put Garrett in a dress, which I really didn't want to do because he really didn't want to do it.
Right.
But, we'd get these middle of the night assignments. Yeah. It was grueling. It was grueling.
And some folks socialize more than others, right? Jane Curtin famously kind of went home early. She was the
only person who had a normal life. She wasn't 9 to 5, but she went home. She had a marriage, which I guess at some point John and Judy were married, but there was nothing normal about them. And Jane just acted like a grown-up and it was mysterious to all of us.
How she managed to do that.
Yeah, she managed to do that. And she's still, still in her marriage, with Patrick.
Good for her. Were you shocked when Chevy Chase decided to leave after the first season?
Well, there was a transformation with Chevy. He evolved, and then he probably devolved a little bit. And he was hit by fame first because he opened the show with a fall, and then in Update he was, "I'm Chevy Chase and you're not." So, and he was big, handsome, goofy guy, and people knew his name first, and then probably Gilda and Belushi was chomping at the bit, so he was probably happy when Chevy left.
Right.
What was your question? I'm not sure I answered.
I think you have.
When Chevy left, I just read a quote recently where Chevy in an interview said something like, if Lorne had twisted his arm not to go, just with a little more, vehemence or passion or interest, he wouldn't have gone. But I think that's his own, regret because he left early but he kind of had quite an arc in that year and a few months.
Yeah. He sure did. I've read the quote. He often would say, well, he followed, there was a girl. There was a,
yes. And Jason made a lot of her in the movie.
Right. Is it true you found a sign in an antique store? The captain's always right, and that's still at Lorne's office? The
captain's word is law. Yeah, I was walking around in the West Village, and I went into an antique store, and I saw it. Even though it had a hyphen in it that bothered me, it was in the wrong place. But I thought, I got it for him. And and then many, many years later in Vanity Fair, I saw, when they do somebody's desk, they take a picture of someone's desk, and I saw it's still there. The captain's word is law.
That's great.
I sort of bought it ironically, and, somebody commented it was the joke that isn't a joke.
Right.
It works.
Yeah.
It works as comedy and tragedy. It's just,
Were you meeting folks, obviously Paul Simon or Paul McCartney or various Pauls? You must have been.
The world trooped through there. A lot of the people you would ever really be. Yeah, that was an amazing aspect of the show. Just.
You
would work with them, and they were fine. I mean, I was more reticent about celebrities than some people.
But I guess you had insight into that world through your dad, and
it
Johnny
was
Wayne.
less mystified to me.
Yeah.
I think I had, from a Canadian perspective, I had met some jazz people and musicians and some other people too. There weren't a lot of celebrities running around Canada then. They pretty much. Everybody ran to the States to get an audience. I mean, it was mainly for the audience.
Did you get to meet the Friendly Giant or Tommy Hunter?
No.
I mean,
why would I? How? What? Is there like a party for?
No.
No, I didn't meet a lot of those people.
I guess not.
I met some of the people that, did my dad's show. I like Don Cullen was, he was just a character actor, but he was a sweet, wonderful man.
He was great on the shows too. He was really
he was great. Even in little tiny parts, he could make me laugh because he played lugubrious particularly well.
Yeah. And it just had a face you always stuck out and remembered, right? He just was impactful.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Were there certain guest hosts that you just really loved their participation, that you enjoyed more than others?
Well, I used to, really like it when Buck Henry, because he would get down with us and we would write together, and that was fun. And we would do the Uncle Roy pieces sometimes. And let's see. I liked Steve Martin as a host, even though he warmed up over time. He was very odd and Robin Williams hosted, and I actually wound up writing a piece with him, which was a thrill.
Wow.
It was pretty casual. I'd worked with Lily Tomlin, so that was always fun if Lily hosted.
Mm-hmm. Richard Pryor.
Well, he kept to himself, but I did sit in and participate in the famous, where they're going cracker and spear chucker back and forth, the word association test.
Wow.
That was weird because it sort of captured the tension that he kind of brought. And there was a lot of fear, like, could you go without the, 10-second
Right. Delay.
The delay
from
mechanism.
the sensors.
Yeah. They were terrified. And
were you there for the infamous Milton Berle episode?
Oh yeah, I was locked in his dressing room. Not locked. I shouldn't say locked. That's not true. But I had to give him notes because he was playing a sketch that I wrote with Ann Beats that Gilda was in, called Pa, in an old folks home, and he was doing spit take after spit take, and it was just horrific.
Wow.
And between dress and air, Lorne just said, go to, you've got to bring him to, yeah, right. Anybody's going to tell him anything. That was impossible because he knew it all, and we were little pishers who didn't know anything. But I went into his room, and I was his dressing room between dress and air to give him the note, don't spit, in the sketch called Pa. And he was like a tennis ball machine spitting shtick at me, one joke after another. And it was a little aggressive, and he was pacing in his shorts, and he was like famous for his endowment. And
right.
it was just a batshit 5 minutes, 10 minutes of my life. Just shtick, and pacing. And then just this visual was like, oh my God. Oh. And then the wardrobe came to put him in his suit, to lead him onto the stage. And I just followed him out screaming, don't spit in Pa. Of course, he spit up a storm. He was just so going for the cheapest laughs, the broadest laughs. Yeah. Nobody ever showed that show again.
It's still in the vault.
It's in the vault.
I have a Milton Berle story. I was at I was at Just for Laughs in Montreal, and the organizers had set me up to interview Milton Berle, and I arrive, and he's just a monster. He's giving the spotlight guy, like he's yelling at him, and he's just abusive to everybody who was trying to rehearse. And the guy running the festival found me, and he said, you're the guy from TV Guide. Go in a room with Milton Berle. Keep him there as long as you can. It's just like your story. Please don't just keep whatever you can.
He's a total monster.
Yeah, because they had to rehearse Mary Tyler Moore was on, and then all these other people. Yeah. And so for 2 hours, I talked to Milton Berle about his favorite subject, and that worked. And he was at one point, he was like, give me a bouncy tea. I thought we were going to tour together. It was really strange. But I'm glad you survived as well.
He just monopolizes the space, and there's no room. Although there was no room for you to exert any agency.
No.
Agency not allowed. Yeah.
Although I will say, the next night at the show, he went on, and the other comics were literally taking bets about how many minutes over he'd go, and he actually killed. He did what he should do, and so that was stuck out as well. So, my goodness. So there's so much. I mean, you're very generous with your time. Thank you so much, Rosie. I don't want to keep you too much longer. There's just...
Yes, I'm going to get a call in a few minutes. So that will be... I'm going to jump off. Yeah,
all right. Let me just quickly say, what makes you laugh on TV today? Is there something you're watching that you really enjoy?
Oh, boy. I have to think about that. I mean... It was like years ago, I really thought the Amy Schumer show that she was doing weekly was very funny. I know that's a really old thing. I liked Veep. That made me laugh out loud. That's an old reference now, too.
Funny show, though. Yeah, very funny.
It was just so... I want to save Tibet. I want to free Tibet. It just really made me laugh. It was just such a... for somebody with no conscience whatsoever to be so in such a craven fashion to get so excited, it kind of checked a lot of boxes in one line.
No kidding. Yeah, and such a great cast. Did you have a favorite show as a youngster growing up? Wow.
That's really hard. I'm trying to think if I had a favorite show. When I started to see SCTV, the early shows, I thought they really did some wonderful things. I loved their using like a dummy dressed as the character so that they would throw it, like in a,
Yeah.
it was, an Anne Bancroft, Helen Keller,
Oh,
and she was just, these dummies were flying in the same costumes. I thought, yeah, that was very funny. Lots of things, lots of isolated things, not necessarily. I watched Seinfeld. I liked Gary Shandling. I wrote some Larry Sanders. I thought that was really, that's an old reference too, but I'm just kind of thinking back.
what a great show, the Larry Sanders
I just
show.
thought that had another level to it, just like in terms of innovative in that.
Which episodes? What was your?
I did the Spiders episode with Carol Burnett.
Oh my God, that was like one of the funniest. Early,
Yeah, it got a lot. Yeah.
Wow. My thanks once again to Rosie Shuster for all the great Saturday Night Live stories, and I hope she found that great dress she wanted for opening night. My thanks as always to producer Phil Hong for making this podcast seem ready for prime time. A shout out as well to BJ Del Conte, Paul Boudra, all the crispy critters, and my old high school friend Stephen Dudley for the music you hear on these episodes. Steve was the Howard Shore of Michael Power St. Joseph's in 1975, 50 years ago. Finally, thanks to you, listener. If you like what you heard, please spread the word. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.